What's going on, everyone? My name is Jasmine. Today's episode of the Slain Project is another episode of Indigenous Killer, where a native person kills a non-native person. And today's case is about 23-year-old Marty Etchemendy. He was abducted and murdered in 1987 by the Kills on Tops brothers, who were from the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. Although justice was served in this case, it'll never bring Marty back. Don't forget to check out my other videos, and if you want to see more videos on missing and murdered Indigenous people, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. And let's get right into it. John Martin Etchemendy II, better known as Marty, had a promising life ahead of him. He played sports in high school and was well liked. After he graduated from Custer County High School in Miles City, Montana, he attended Montana Tech in Butte, where he graduated in 1986 with a degree in petroleum engineering. Marty had met the love of his life, Colleen, who was also a student, at a grocery store where she worked, and they married in Vegas in 1984. Colleen's father was an FBI supervisory agent at the time. His name was Kelly Hemmert. They had two sons together who they named Johnny and Jeffrey, and this in a sense completed Marty's life. He was excited to start his own family and felt a deep connection to his biological children because he and his brother Mike were both adopted. Marty was adopted by a loving couple named John and Julie Etchemendy, and they treated him as one of their own. The Etchemendys were a prominent family in town and owned Miles City Sanitation and a Texaco plant. A man named Carl Bensel worked for Marty's dad and was the office manager and corporate vice president. He retired in July 1987. Marty was having trouble finding work as a petroleum engineer, so he moved his young family from Butte back to Miles City to manage his father's sanitation company. He was set up to eventually take over the family business one day. Marty, who was 23 years old at the time, began a horrific nightmare on Friday, October 16, 1987. He asked Colleen if she wanted to go to the high school football game that night. She told him no because it was already close to 5 p.m. and it would be hard to find a babysitter on short notice. Marty said okay and decided to head to the game by himself. Marty was a popular person around town and had no problems doing things by himself. He always ran into familiar faces when he was out and about. His wife Colleen settled in for the night, and she put her two small children to bed before drifting off to sleep herself. Marty had not arrived home by the time she lied down, and she just figured he would come back a little bit later. When she woke up the next day on Saturday, October 17th, Marty still had not come home. Colleen just figured maybe he had too much to drink on his night out and stayed the night with one of his buddies. But the day drug on, and Marty never returned home or called. It is stated that after not being seen for 16 hours, that Marty was reported as missing. This would take place at around 4 p.m. on that Saturday. Colleen had been calling around for Marty and learned from one of his friends that after the football game, they drove Marty's car to the Golden West Lounge. This friend stayed at the bar with Marty for a while, and after midnight, he caught another ride home, leaving Marty at the bar by himself. This was the last confirmed sighting of Marty by anyone that personally knew him. The Custer County Sheriff at the time, named Tony Harba, had known Marty for years and considered him a friend. He helped coordinate the search, and he began by questioning people at the bar. Upon arriving at the bar, Marty's car was found about a block and a half away. The vehicle was found unlocked, and the family dog was still inside. Some cash was also found in the car, so police initially did not think robbery was a motive, but then it appeared as if Marty never made it back to his car from the bar. A bartender said that Marty stayed after his friend left and that they saw him get into a black Plymouth Duster with 4 natives, 2 males and 2 females. The bartender did not know who the natives were, and there was no indication that they were friends of Marty's. Sheriff Harba intensified his search by driving down Tongue River Road that leads from Miles City back to the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. He just assumed that the natives would head back towards the reservation. It was dark by the time he ordered this search, and he advised everyone to search the area thoroughly with headlights and flashlights. An empty beer box was soon found, and farther up the road a piece of clothing was found that had red stains and it was presumed to be blood. The deputy county attorney at the time, Dennis Corbin, was also a friend of Marty's. He brought the piece of clothing to Colleen to identify. She screamed and fell to the ground and identified it as Marty's boxers. The situation had just taken a turn for the worse, because why would Marty be without his boxers? And how did the blood get on his underwear? The search intensified because there was a concern about Marty catching hypothermia in the cold October night. Saturday came and went, and the only sign of Marty was his boxers. His family and friends were extremely worried for his safety, and a break in the case would come the next day, on Sunday, October 18, 1987. By this time, Marty had been missing for about 32 hours. A woman named Doretta Forbear came forward with vital information. She said she was with 3 friends, Diane Bullcoming and Lester and Vernon Kills on top. Lester and Vernon were brothers and were from Busby on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. Doretta offered up the following information after leaving her group of friends. She said Marty was still in the trunk of their car when she left. The group of friends were in Miles City and stopped at M&H gas station to stock up on beer. They were in the parking lot of the Golden West Lounge when Marty left around closing time. He was intoxicated and looking for his car. The group of friends offered to give him a ride and help look for his car. A plan was quickly hatched to rob Marty, and the friends spoke in their native language so Marty would not understand their plan. Vern Kills on top began driving back towards the res, and when they got about 10 miles out of town, Marty began to get nervous because he knew they were taking him somewhere he didn't want to go. Marty said he had to pee, so the car was stopped to let him do that. Marty used this as an opportunity to try to escape. He was soon captured and beaten by Lester, who also kicked him with cowboy boots. Vernon then stripped Marty of his clothing and placed him in the trunk of the car. Doretta said that while Marty was being held captive, he was pleading for his life and spoke of his wife and kids. Marty told them that he would give them anything they wanted if they let him go. But the group of friends were too deep into their devious plan to turn back. They did not want to go to jail. They continued to torture Marty and stole his wallet that contained cash and credit cards. Doretta would later testify that Diane was the one who took the wallet and purged its contents. This is something that Diane denied. It should be noted here that it appears that the car switched drivers many times throughout Marty's ordeal. But then again, it also appears that the blame was also being shifted around. Liquor and pills were also forced down Marty's throat in an attempt to make him fall asleep. The pills were purchased by Vernon in Miles City from a drug dealer before they encountered Marty. Diane was driving when they arrived in Ashland around 5 a.m. on Saturday morning. They picked up a woman named Levon Curaz. She attempted to siphon gas from a pickup truck before the Kills on Top brothers decided to use Marty's credit card to purchase gas in Ashland. Doretta decided to leave the group at this time, but would not come forward to the police until the next day on Sunday. After this point, the rest of the information of what happened to Marty comes from Diane Bullcoming, Levon Curaz, and the Kills on Top brothers. They were all charged and convicted for being involved in Marty's death. Diane and Lester both blamed each other for the murder of Marty. Although some parts of the story differ, the only thing we know for certain is that Marty died as a result. After Doretta left, Levon drove the car and they continued towards Broadus, Montana, where they cashed one of Marty's payroll checks. They then continued on the road and forced Marty to drink Everclear, which is a strong form of alcohol. They made a second stop in Biddle, Wyoming, and cashed another check Marty had at about 11 a.m. The next stop the friends made was at a bar in Gillette, Wyoming. The devious group of friends were contemplating what to do with Marty, and he was making noise in the trunk of the car. Vernon and Levon stayed at the bar, while Lester and Diane dealt with Marty. They drove around the area before deciding to stop on an isolated road at a spot that could not be seen from the main road. Marty was beaten with a pipe and rock before the car continued on the road. Lester ordered the car to stop again, and he attempted to set off a stray bullet with a pair of vice grips, but it did not work. Efforts to kill Marty were scratched at this time because of an oncoming vehicle. Diane claims she and Lester drove back towards Gillette and had to stop at the first bar they saw because they had 2 flat tires. Diane called Vernon at the other bar to have him meet up with them. While she was on the phone, Marty was making noise in the trunk to try to alert someone that he needed help. Diane then claims that Lester ended Marty's life here by cutting his neck with a small knife, but the autopsy report would show a different cause of death. At this point, Diane claims she fell asleep while waiting for Vernon. After Vernon showed up and the tires were repaired, the group drove to an isolated area outside of town and found an old abandoned building about 20 miles outside of Gillette. They decided that this is where they were going to dump Marty. A rancher and his stepson had seen Vernon's car parked near the old building. He saw 3 people walk over to the trunk and close it before driving off. They did not close the gate to the property when they left, so the rancher chased them down and demanded that they close the gate. The rancher wrote down their license plate number at this time. Marty's brutal torture had lasted approximately 13 hours. His bright future was darkened by the heinous acts of the Kills on Top brothers. Perhaps if Doretta went to the police right away, he could have been saved. After this, the friends checked into a motel in Sheridan, Wyoming. Vernon and Levon took off and left Lester and Diane. They made their way back to Busby, while Lester and Diane purchased new clothes with Marty's credit card and hitchhiked back to Billings, Montana. They stayed with a friend of Diane's, and this friend said that Lester bragged about beating and killing a white man with a tire iron. Back in Montana on Monday, October 19, 1987, and 3 days after Marty attended the football game, Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office briefed their deputies to be on the lookout for a black Plymouth Duster that belonged to Vernon. The Bolos said that it was possible that Marty was still in the trunk of the car. 5 minutes after the briefing, Deputy Ken Best spotted the black Duster in Billings and pulled it over. Vernon was driving and he had Levon with him and a male friend named Lynn Ross Bixby. They had picked him up in Busby prior to being pulled over. All 3 occupants of the vehicle were arrested, and the deputy discovered that Vernon had Marty's driver's license. The trunk was open and Marty was not in there, but it was noted that there was a red substance believed to be blood in the trunk. Vernon remained silent, but Levon told the officers that Marty's body was dumped near Gillette. The area was combed over and Marty's lifeless body was discovered in the old abandoned building. His father-in-law, Kelly Hemmer, who was an FBI supervisory agent, went to the scene to identify his remains. That same day, Lester and Diane were located at her friend Lorraine's trailer. They had heard earlier that Vern was arrested, and they burned Marty's credit cards and some clothing that they had purchased with them. Marty's body was sent for autopsy, and it indicated that he was beaten to death. Colleen was advised by the funeral home not to see Marty until he was prepared for burial because he was in pretty bad shape. Colleen said that she wishes she could go back and view his body. There was always a bit of racial tensions in the Montana area surrounding the Northern Cheyenne and Crow Indian reservations, and there still is today. But this was kicked up a notch after the arrest of the Kills on Top brothers because almost everyone was outraged about what happened to Marty. Doretta Forbear and Diane Bullcoming testified against the brothers. Doretta was the one who initially came forward with information, and the prosecution needed Diane because she knew everything that had happened. Doretta would get 5 years probation for failing to report a felony, and Diane would get 40 years after pleading guilty to robbery and was released in the year 2000 after serving only 12 years. Lavon Curaz, the friend that was picked up in Ashland, was charged with aiding and abetting and failure to report a crime, and she received a 3-year sentence. Marty Etchemendy's murder rocked the small town of Miles City, and the case was followed closely by the media and public. The trials for the Kills on Top brothers was moved out of Miles City because all of the publicity. Lester and Vernon were tried separately, but during their trials, the brothers detailed their lives growing up. They explained that they lived in poverty on the reservation, and their parents were severe alcoholics who abused them. It was mentioned that both brothers had minor run-ins with the law prior, but nothing too serious. Although this is a harsh reality for many natives on and off the reservation, it does not justify their actions on the night they abducted and murdered Marty during an alcoholic-fueled night. Lester was convicted on Friday, June 24, 1988, in Fallon County of robbery, kidnapping, and murder. The 6-man and 6-woman jury only deliberated for about 3 hours. Vernon was convicted on August 5, 1988, in Yellowstone County of the same charges under the felony murder rule, which made him just as guilty as Lester, even though he was not the one who actually ended Marty's life. Both brothers received the death penalty based on the following aggravated circumstances. The aggravated kidnapping of Marty resulted in his death. The killing of Marty was carried out by torturing him. The brothers were sent to death row at the Montana State Prison, and their cells were right next to each other. While in prison, the brothers continued to fight their charges and death sentence in court. They discovered that the prosecution failed to disclose Diane Bull Cummins' prior arrest record and that she falsely accused a jail worker of rape while she was awaiting trial. These details could have casted doubt on her credibility if known at the time of her sworn testimony. In 1995, their sentences were eventually commuted to life in prison ×2 without the possibility of parole due to this error by the prosecution. In 2019, Vernon found a loophole and appealed his sentence. This was victorious for him, and this removed his kidnapping conviction based on double jeopardy. This made him immediately eligible for parole, but he would pass away in prison in 2020 before he could ever get a chance of release. The possibility that Vernon could have been released caused Marty's family a great deal of stress. His 2 sons were too young to remember him, but take comfort in knowing that their dad loved them very much and that they were his last thoughts. His wife Colleen has since remarried, but her love for Marty has remained the same. Marty's entire family was robbed when he was tragically murdered. They did receive justice, but this will never bring Marty back. Lester Kills on Top is still currently incarcerated and will more than likely never breathe in freedom again. Marty Etchemendy is gone, but not forgotten. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you knew Marty or were in Montana around the time this happened, please share your memories down below, and I will see you in my next video.